Moving on sounds simple when people say it quickly, but from the inside, it rarely feels simple at all. It feels like loosening your grip on something your heart has grown used to carrying. One quiet evening, while late sunlight softened the walls of his room and a notebook lay open on the desk, Tan began to understand something that made moving on feel less cruel. It is not about forgetting what mattered. It is about no longer letting it govern the shape of your present life. Tan had been trying to move on for a long time, not in a dramatic public way, quietly, in the hidden places where attachments linger after the visible story is already over, in the way he still measured new days against old feelings, in the way memory could still rearrange an entire evening, in the way the heart sometimes keeps carrying what the mind knows has ended. He was tired of it. Tired of certain thoughts still having access to so much of his attention. Tired of small reminders changing the atmosphere of his day. Tired of telling himself to just let go, as if the heart obeyed commands that easily. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes not only from pain itself, but from being emotionally tied to pain longer than you want to be. That was where he was living. That evening, his room was quiet and warm with the last light of day. The notebook on the desk reflected a pale amber glow. He sat down slowly, feeling the familiar mix of sadness and readiness that often appears just before a person becomes honest in a new way. He wrote, "Why is it so hard for me to move on?" The answers came quietly. Because part of me still wants a different ending. Because memory feels safer than emptiness. Because I confuse holding on with honoring what mattered. Because I keep revisiting what I say I want to leave behind. Because I have not fully accepted that this belongs to the past. He stared at the final line. There it was. Acceptance. Not forgetting, not pretending, not becoming cold. Simply accepting that something no longer belongs to the current life, even if it still carries emotional weight. He turned the page. What does moving on actually mean? Not erasing, not denying, not saying it didn't matter. It means loosening the grip. It means not building each day around old pain. It means allowing the present to become real again. That last line changed the room inside him. Allowing the present to become real again. Because that was what lingering attachment had quietly stolen, not only peace, but presence. He had been living in partial attention. One foot in the current day, the other in something already gone. The sunlight had grown softer now, deepening across the desk. Tan realized that moving on is not a betrayal of what once mattered. It is a restoration of the life that is still here. The room, the breath, the tea cooling beside the notebook, the evening waiting to be lived. None of these things ask him to erase the past. They only ask not to be abandoned for it. So he wrote a new heading. What would help me move on more gently? Stop reopening the same wound for proof. Let memory remain memory. Do not ask the past to comfort me. Build small peace in the present. Allow sadness without letting it become my home. He looked at the list and felt something inside him soften. Moving on did not have to be harsh. It did not have to sound like emotional violence against himself. It could be tender, slow, honest. A repeated decision to return attention to what is alive now. He wrote 3 small actions beneath the list. No revisiting old messages tonight. Sit with this room as it is. Let one quiet moment belong fully to the present. That evening, he followed through. He made tea and drank it without pairing it with memory. He watched the last light fade from the window without turning the moment into a comparison. He wrote one more page in the notebook, not about what he had lost, but about what he still wanted his life to feel like from here. Peaceful, simple, clear. More here. The words were modest, but they felt like a beginning. Over the following weeks, Tom kept practicing this gentler form of moving on. He stopped feeding old emotional pathways with constant revisiting. He let certain memories remain untouched. He invested more attention in ordinary present things: the room, the body, the morning, the evening, the next task, the next walk, the next real breath. And slowly, the attachment loosened. Not because he forced it to, because he stopped asking it to be the center of his emotional life. That is often how moving on happens. Not in one triumphant decision, but in many quiet evenings where the present is allowed back into the room. Moving on is not forgetting. It is not dishonoring. It is not pretending the past did not matter. Sometimes it is simply this: not reopening what already said enough, not letting memory consume the evening, not asking old pain to keep you company. A quiet room, a notebook, warm light fading on the desk, and the slow return of your own life to the center of your attention. This is moving on too. Not dramatic, not cold, just increasingly free. And perhaps freedom begins the moment the present no longer has to compete so hard with what is already gone. If this touched you, comment, "I let the present become real again." Subscribe for more warm, reflective life stories about healing, release, and quiet peace.